Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 487, for the 18th of February 2018. Richard Saunders here with you from a very muggy, steamy Sydney, Australia. And before we get started with the show, a big congratulations to my friend Tim Ferguson, who does the Bunga Bunga podcast with our reporter Maynard. Just today, Tim had an exhibition of some of his artworks, and it was very well attended. And I think the artworks were selling well. So congratulations, Tim. It's always a big thing, actually, when you have an art exhibition. I've had an exhibition, I suppose, of photography once. It's very exciting. And again, warm congratulations to Tim Ferguson. And don't forget, you can hear Tim and Maynard doing Bunga Bunga podcast at maynard.com.au. Now, I had a funny thing happen to me the other day. Funny? Well, not really funny. I was stepping on a cardboard box to make it go flat so I could then take it up to the recycle bin as a household that practices recycling. So there I was, stomping away. When my foot came down on the cardboard box, it lost traction on the wooden floor. My foot went with the box away from my body, and I was sort of tipped over straight back down onto the hard wooden floor on my coccyx. Ouch. I was completely winded, dazed and confused. I didn't know what had happened, in great pain, and for a moment I wondered if I could actually stand up at all. I whacked my arm on the table going down. Luckily, there wasn't anything behind my head. I eventually got to my feet and sort of crawled off to bed. The next day, my back and my lower back especially got progressively worse. I was feeling a little bit disorientated. And what I should have done right away, which I didn't do, was I went to the doctor, who referred me to get x-rays. Luckily, I didn't break anything, but it really hurt, I can tell you, folks. So that's why the Skeptic Zone is a little bit disjointed and short this week. I was just a little bit out of sorts. Feeling much better now, almost back to normal. But my advice, don't fall over on your coccyx. But now, what's on this week's episode of The Skeptic Zone? I'm going to start with a little bit of information about a very cold case here in Australia. Way back in 1966, in fact, 3 children went missing from Adelaide. It's called the Beaumont Children case. It's very famous in Australia. And the reason it's of interest to the skeptical community is because it's an early example of a so-called psychic detective being called in to try and shed some light on these missing children. Now, the children have never been found, so it's well over 50 years now. But the story in regards to the psychic is a good lesson even for us today. So I'll be chatting about that before the show really gets underway. But then we have a grain of salt with Eran Segev, and Eran is going to bring us up to date on the fundraising campaign that he and Australian Skeptics initiated for Britt Hermes, the ex-naturopath who is being sued or threatened with legal action by naturopaths. Following that, it's a very interesting interview Maynard conducted at Skeptics in the Pub with Dr Andrea Leong, who was there to give a talk. And her speciality is, microbiology, biology of the gut, that sort of thing. It's a wide-ranging discussion, and yes, chocolate is mentioned. Is it good to eat chocolate? From her point of view, find out. I hope the answer is yes. I certainly hope the answer is yes. And she is also a candidate, a representative from the Science Party, the political party based on science. An interesting interview coming up a bit later on in the show. Then we hear from Élisabeth Feytit and Jessica Schab about their upcoming project, Memoirs of a Former Mystic. Now, Jessica and Élisabeth were interviewed on the Skeptic Zone last year by Eran Segev. I'll add a link to that in the show notes in case you want a recap or you didn't hear it. This is all about the fact that Jessica was considered to be a mystic, a New Age guru, and she went around the world preaching the New Age until she more or less woke up to herself. The penny dropped. And now she's, I guess you'd call it, she's a defector to science. It made a lot of New Age people very upset. Anyway, this is a little update about that whole project. A very interesting project, and I'm looking forward to seeing the finished product and also information on how you can help the project come along. And then we'll bring you a story from the Australian Skeptics website about the expected scientific literacy for complementary and alternative practitioners. And out of 12 recommended criteria, scientific literacy comes 11th. Well, that sort of makes sense in a way. If complementary and alternative practitioners were required to have high scientific literacy, maybe they wouldn't be complementary and alternative practitioners. All that coming up on the Skeptic Zone. But before we start, here's my take on the Beaumont case. Now, the reason that I got very interested in this case was a couple of weeks ago, police received credible evidence of the possible burial site of these children in a warehouse in Adelaide. And this evidence was based on a possible suspect brought to the attention of the police and some work done like geophysics, ground-penetrating radar type work, which indicated an anomaly in the yard of this warehouse. So police took that all into consideration and decided that it was probably worth a dig. Sadly, after the police were digging, they found nothing. I think there were some animal skeletons or some rubbish left there many, many, many years ago. So another dead end in the case, unfortunately. But way back in the 60s, in 1966, and these children disappeared on the 26th of January 1966. The case caught the imagination of the whole country, in fact, where it was quite a horrible thing to have 3 children simply disappear. Suspects were flagged, ideas were put forward, claims that the children were abducted and taken overseas. But as the months went by, the case sort of stagnated and there was really no leads. That's when the Dutch clairvoyant, psychic, mystic, seer, as he was known in the press, Gerard Courset was brought in. Now, he had been sent letters and information all the way to the Netherlands from Adelaide, including, I was about to say a video, but it was a film made from a helicopter of the beach, Glenelg Beach, from where it was suspected the children disappeared. He used his visions and declared that the children were actually buried somewhere, but there was no foul play. They were buried by accident. This really did catch the popular imagination of the time, and there were many newspaper articles and reports about this mystic seer in the Netherlands. So much interest was generated, and by now people were getting a bit desperate. They really needed to try to bring this case to a close, that a local businessman by the name of Con Polites helped sponsor a visit by Gerard Courset to Australia. And even on the flight to Australia, which in the mid-60s took quite some time, he was accompanied by reporters who were sending back reports about his latest vision, just getting to Adelaide. When he arrived in Adelaide in November 1966, he was met by hundreds of people at Adelaide Airport and over 30 representatives of TV, radio and newspaper media. In fact, I've come across a few reports that liken it to the Beatles arriving. Over the next 2.5 days, Courset, as far as I can determine from all the research I've done, largely through archival newspaper reports, drove around or was driven around following his visions and making notes, followed also by the media who were close behind. He'd talk to people, he'd look at spots, he'd make more notes and sketches, he'd have more visions. At one stage, he spent an hour with a woman who claimed she had a vision about the children. And this went on for 2 days. Eventually, he decided that the children were buried under a concrete floor of a recently built warehouse, and then promptly left the country. Well, just before he did, he spent an hour or two with the parents of the Beaumont children. A strange thing to do, I guess. He told the parents that he thought the children were dead, or his vision told him that. Mrs. Beaumont, for one, refused to believe her children were dead. Anyway, he flies off. Such was the public demand, I guess you'd say, for something to be done after this psychic had the vision of where the children were, that the Premier of the state and the Deputy Police Commissioner actually had a conference to decide what to be done. Should they authorise the excavation of this warehouse? It even went to State Cabinet. Eventually, after a couple of days, Cabinet decided, based on the advice of police, that there was no reasonable chance that the children would be buried there, and any excavation would be a complete waste of time and money. The police had very good reasons to think that it just wouldn't have happened. The children wouldn't be buried there under any circumstances. Although that information in detail wasn't at hand, you'd have to think the police knew what they were talking about. Well, that wasn't very satisfactory for the citizens, the good citizens of Adelaide, who shortly thereafter, or some of them at least, formed an action committee, raised something like $40,000, and had an excavation performed anyway the next year. Alas, nothing was found. And you think, well, that's sort of where that story ends. But no. 30 years later, in 1996, the same man, the same businessman who helped sponsor Cosette's visit in the 60s, Con Polides, funded another excavation. So convinced was he that that's where the children were, because that's what the psychic said all those years ago. Again, nothing was found, not a thing. Now, I'm sure there are people listening right now who remember those days, and remember when the children disappeared over 50 years ago, and probably remember the fuss, the pandemonium of having a psychic come all the way from the Netherlands and look for these missing children. And it's, from a skeptical point of view, it's fascinating to follow the case day by day through newspaper reports. And also to realize that despite all the evidence that would suggest that this man didn't know what he was talking about and more or less randomly wandering and driving around streets and looking for visions and signs, that people really did think he was the real deal. Even up to 30 years later, they couldn't let it drop. And even today, Australia is plagued with so-called psychic detectives, people who waste the time of police sending them their visions. And it reminds me of what Detective Chief Inspector Gary Jubilan of the New South Wales Police Force said only a few months ago in a media statement. Quote, "We are not interested in information from clairvoyants or people that have had dreams. We're interested in people that have genuine information." End quote. So people can whine and whinge about the skeptics all they like, saying, of course the skeptics don't believe in psychic detectives and psychics helping police. Well, that may be the case, but when something comes from the police themselves saying, basically, stop wasting our time, then I think everybody should listen. Well, after all that, and that's an interesting case. Oh, you can read much more about that, by the way. I wrote a full report in the next issue of The Skeptic, the magazine from Australian skeptics. And after all that, I think it's time for me to run downstairs, have a very, very large glass of ice-cold water with extra ice. Well, I do that. I hope you enjoy The Skeptic Zone.
Grain of salt, grain of salt, grain of salt.
Let's all take this with a grain of salt. Here's Eran Segev.
Grain of salt now, grain of salt, you got to take it with a...
Yes, it's a grain of salt with Eran Segev. Hello, Eran.
Hello, Richard. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad, as you know, because the other night, and as I told my listeners at the top of the show, I I was crunching down a cardboard box in my living room to put it into the recycle, and my foot went down on the box and it slipped on the box and the wooden floor, and I went straight backwards on my coccyx, and I'm just waiting to get the x-rays. Apart from that, I'm doing really well.
I'm glad. I'm glad that's the only thing. Yeah.
Me too. But more important matters. Recently, our listeners certainly have been aware of the campaign to help Britt Hermes.
Yes.
And which was initiated by you, of course. And can you let us know the latest developments on that?
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, the campaign is sort of ongoing in that we still have donations coming in at a slow pace. There's a drip, maybe about 10 to 15 donations a day. We are now up to the total donations so far, 95,000.
Wow.
Which is quite astonishing. We got to our target of 80,000, which is 50,000 euros. We got to that within 8 days, which was
8 days.
8 days. That's all it took for the international skeptical community to raise the funds required to defend Britt or protect her against the potential financial problems that could arise if she had to pay for this litigation herself. Which means that she can stand up to the bullying of Colleen Huber. And hopefully it won't come to that. Hopefully she won't need the money. Hopefully this will be thrown out very quickly. However, if it does go the length of a usual court case, we will be able to pay her legal bills.
And that would be a big story in itself.
This is in similar light to the campaign we did for Ken Harvey in 2011. We are trying to not only protect Britt here, we're also trying to send a message to quacks out there that they should not mess with skeptics, because we will not bow and we will defend our own and we'll make sure that the truth can be heard. In that respect, it should be noted that we are going further than simply Britt. Because we've already collected more than money than Britt will likely need, even in the worst case scenario, and we are hopeful that Britt won't need all that money. We will have a chunk of money out there available for the establishment of a legal defense fund, and we are already working on the establishment of such a fund. It will not be an Australian Skeptics Fund. It will be something international, so we're working with several international colleagues on establishing it, but it will be a while before that happens, but there will be money out there, and there will be a mechanism for skeptics who are being sued to seek some help.
But it's certainly not then a green light for people to shoot their mouths off.
No, it's definitely not that, and we actually one of the things we've been talking about is that Steve Novella suggested that we should have a primer that basically tells people this is how not to get sued.
Yes.
And people who ignore that will not be eligible to be helped. I mean, if you try to get sued, if you go out there and you're not cautious enough and you defame people unnecessarily, not simply telling the truth but actually defaming people, then you're on your own. We're not there to simply support people being just stupid about the way they behave. But when somebody simply exposes some quackery, which is what Britt does, she simply exposes naturopathy in general and specific naturopaths in particular, and she exposes them based on the evidence. She deserves to be protected. She does not deserve to be sued, and that's why we've done this.
Well, she gave a wonderful talk at our recent convention only a couple of months ago via video from her home in Germany, but that was a highlight of the convention, I think.
Yes, he was. He was very well received, and we hope to have her here at some future event.
In person, that would be... I've met Britt a few times, and she's absolutely wonderful. Well, thanks, Eran, and people can still contribute to that if they feel so inclined.
Yeah, and they can go to skeptics.com.au/Britt Hermes, or just Britt. Some people have put in place a recurring donation, which is a really good idea, because then it's small amounts, maybe $10, $15 a month, but every month, and that it accumulates. We had so far 2,300 donations, which is a very large number. Most of them are under $20. There were a few large ones, but most of them are under $20, and yet we are now at $95,000. So it shows you the power of large numbers. So anybody who can donate, maybe put in place a recurring donation. That's very helpful.
Thanks, Eran.
Thank you, Richard.
Grain of salt now. Grain of salt, you gotta take it with a
Calling all Skeptic Zone listeners. Do you live in or near Glasgow, or are you planning to visit sometime? Then you're in luck, because the Glasgow Skeptics have got your Monday nights sorted. We're committed to filling up every available Monday night with talks on science and skepticism. Past speakers include Eugenie Scott, Jerry Coyne, Michael Marshall, Nate Phelps, Tom and Cecil from Cognitive Dissonance, PZ Myers, Richard Wiseman, AC Grayling, Noah Heath and Eli from The Scathing Atheist, Simon Singh, Rebecca Watson, and a multitude of local academics and skeptics. There's literally nothing better you can do on a Monday night in Glasgow that doesn't involve taking your clothes off. So come join us. We've also got a vibrant online community. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and get involved with the discussion. Glasgow Skeptics. Self-help for your brain.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Well, of course, it's Skeptics at the pub here. It's February. It's a packed room, over 120 people, 120,000 people here to hear about poo and a whole stack of other stuff. Now, who have we got here and where are you from?
My name's Andrea Leong and I'm a microbiologist. I currently work in a private company doing research on the bacteria that you find in probiotics, but I've worked on antibacterial surfaces in the past. I'm quite interested in looking at ways that we can interact with microbes other than killing them all with antibiotics.
And what drew you into this field in the first place? Bacteria. I mean, surely viruses are where all the sexy action is in science, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you get the best of both worlds. Bacteria have viruses of their own.
Yes, you had some photos of it. Yeah, wow.
I've just always had an interest in microbiology, I guess. I've just always wanted to look at the causes of human health and disease, and then through uni I realised that microbiology was for me. It gets a bit smelly in the lab sometimes.
Has this changed in any way the way you look at public restrooms, for example?
I think it's actually made me less of a germphobe.
Okay.
Because I suppose I work with bacteria in the lab. I know as long as I wash my hands, I'm not going to get sick. So that's actually something that I think about antibacterial soap.
Yes.
So if you weren't getting sick before, then antibiotic soap isn't really doing any good, is it? It's a waste of money.
Oh, because look, my dad, he's a classic 50s dad. He's about 90, so it's man versus nature in the garden. In the house, it's everything's got to be clean all the time. And if he could have an antibiotic hat, he'd wear one.
So I would have to say definitely working with bacteria on a day-to-day basis makes me less concerned about the bacteria that you see on door handles and things like that, but maybe a little more concerned about some of the bacteria that cause disease. No, actually, that's not true. When it comes to food as well, I think, that's fine. That's fine for another day, the leftovers.
Yes, so the use-by date, because you're a professional who's trained, you can let that go a couple of days.
Yeah, I think I've probably just got a bit of hubris and think I'm the bacteria whisperer.
And what is the most fascinating bacteria to you? Everybody's got their own, every doctor's got a favourite part of the body, a favourite disease. What's the most interesting bacteria to you? Is it one we'd know, or is it one of these smarty pants ones?
I'm a fan of Akkermansia mucinophilia.
Wow.
That's a bacteria that lives in the gut and actually, as its carbohydrate source, likes to eat our gut mucus. So if it eats too much of that, we can have some trouble as the mucus is broken down too far. And if we don't have enough of that bacteria, we can also even have trouble when the mucus builds up too much. So it's like everything, delicate balance.
So how does your gut regulate the amount of that bacteria? How do they kill it off or promote more of it?
I think that bacteria in particular also breaks down fibre in the gut. So if you're eating the right amount of fibre, I think most people don't tend to have a problem. It tends to stay in a good balance.
And we've got another excuse as to why we're eating too much chocolate. And you gave it to us today. Tell the listeners about this. This is a great one. Oh, it's the bacteria. I just ate the whole packet of Tim Tams. Bacteria.
Yeah, so there are some theories that the bacteria in our guts actually influence our cravings for certain foods because it's in their best interests to keep us eating the things that nourish them. So there was a study that found that individuals who strongly desire chocolate have a different microbiome to, different bacterial metabolites in their urine, I should say. I shouldn't overstep that. Different bacterial metabolites in the urine of chocolate appreciators compared to people who don't much care for chocolate. So there's some correlation there. Who knows if it's causation, but I'll be blaming the bacteria.
And what's probably the best thing we can eat for our gut flora and fauna? Oh, there's probably some animals down there. Yeah, what's the best thing? Is there one thing that's better than anything else, or is it such an individual thing you couldn't even answer that question?
The gut microbiome varies a lot from person to person, but there are some species that are pretty much common to all of us. But the best thing we can do to nourish our gut microbiome is to eat a lot of fibre. The bacteria that like to break down fibre are generally the good guys, and we want a lot of those.
And lots of complex sugars, not so good.
And lots of simple sugars also not so good. So not that I'm advocating a low carbohydrate diet by any means.
Oh, no.
But high fibre. We don't generally eat as much fibre as we should in our modern diets.
Well, I'm going to go and eat a raw carrot right now. Where can we find you online or see what you're up to? Have you got a place online we can visit?
I have a candidate page for the Science Party. I'm the candidate for the federal seat of Kingsford Smith, and I'm the leader of the New South Wales Science Party. So you can find me kicking around those pages, or I am on Twitter at Andrea __Leong.
Have you had a chance to do any political debates with the standard candidates in your seat yet?
I have. So in the 2000...
How'd that go? Did you use big words on them? And you didn't get emotional?
Yes, tried to keep it very rational. So I was quite lucky in the 2016 election that the concerned citizens of Kingsford Smith organised a few debates among the candidates, so I got to cut my teeth there. So politics is quite weird, but I like it.
Oh yeah, it's really weird. Was there something that happened where you went, oh wow, I forgot that if you do that people get all weird?
Talking about nuclear power.
Yes, that would be a tough one, because everyone's got, well look, it's environmentally friendly, but if you spill something, that's a long time.
Yeah, but then looking at the alternative that we have at the moment, I think I'll take the potential future harm of radioactive waste over the current known harm of more CO2 emissions and also the particulates that we don't talk too much about.
That's true.
We talk a lot about the greenhouse gas effect, but lots of people are dying from and getting lung disease and all sorts from the particulates from coal.
And as I'll just have to ask, as stepping into the political field briefly, when you stepped on that landmine of the nuclear power issue, was there a inhaled breath from the room? Did the whole room go? What's the sign you look out for that we all should look for?
Oh yeah, there was actually a collective intake of breath, but I should have armed myself beforehand with the knowledge that actually I think about 20% of Australians are in favour of nuclear energy and another 20% aren't opposed. They're sort of nuclear energy neutral. So if I'd known that beforehand, I would have been much more confident. So forewarned is forearmed.
So you're looking forward to the next election, are you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yes, of course.
Yeah, I know. It's extra stuff on top of your studies and your work.
It is, but...
look, you're getting issues out there. And look, like Dick Smith, how he likes to talk about the population debate, I think the nuclear debate is one that should be had.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's beneficial to get that out there, that Australians aren't so opposed to nuclear power as we're led to believe.
Well, thank you for your time tonight. Were we a good audience? No one at any stage, although some smarty bum told you to read The Origins of Species. You should goose him. Sorry?
Origins of Feces.
The Origins of Feces. Oh, is that what he said? I see. Okay, right. Well, okay. Yeah, funny one, mate. Okay. Thank you very much, and we hope to have you back again sometime.
All right, thank you very much.
The
Skeptic Magazine, the journal from Australian skeptics. Subscribe online to the world's second oldest skeptical magazine. Visit www.skeptics.com.au and click the publications link. You can also find there over 30 years of back issues free to download. The Skeptic, the magazine from Australian skeptics. Memoirs of a Former Mystic, a documentary film being made by Jessica Schab and Élisabeth Feytit. In production now, a film where a former spiritual leader dares to expose what she once taught and believed so fondly. After 10 years of being a new age guru and iconic crystal child, Jessica Schab, aka Jessica Mystic, chose to quit her mission and started deconditioning herself from the esoteric ideas that had ruled her life for so long.
Hello, I'm Élisabeth Feytit. I'm the producer of the documentary project Memoirs of a Former Mystic. I met Jessica Schab 2 years ago and she told me about her story. And I felt, okay, we have to make a film about this. So Jessica, can you tell us what the story is all about?
Yes, in this film, I'm going to take people into a journey of how I end up believing these things to begin with. The spiritual New Age ideologies that is all about love, light, and consciousness and connecting to your infinite potential and being positive. But also dealing with the darker energy, which we call the Illuminati, that is controlling the government. And I thought I had this very important information. And so I decided to make a YouTube video in 2008 called My Message to Humanity. And this video ended up getting a lot of interest and support from people. They were so impressed by it and they felt that I had something really important. And before I knew it, I was asked to speak all over the world about my spiritual messages. And it was just suddenly became a guru. And when I really believed what I was doing, I really felt it was helping and it was right and it was true. So I accepted this label, this title. And I also became a celebrity in the esoteric field. But as time went on, I started to realize that these beliefs were really not helping, that it was difficult to be able to face reality with these beliefs, particularly also for myself, that these beliefs were the answer and solution to all of our problems. And my own personal life was a mess, and they weren't able to help me. So I started to feel also very trapped by these beliefs. And I also saw that I really wanted to believe they were helping, but the more I saw that they really weren't, and I had a responsibility because I helped to encourage this. Therefore, I had to be the one to now speak out and expose it, but really nothing prepared me for how my followers reacted when I did this.
Yeah, as you see, it's a very exciting project. The testimonial of a person who was a believer and became a skeptic. And it's really a provocation, actually, from this outstanding story to tell people to question their own beliefs, to question their own way of thinking. And sometimes we think we do the best, we are doing good, we are looking for the truth, and actually we're doing some harm to ourselves and to others. So this film is going to be an adventure. We're going to go around the world to shoot sequences where Jessica was once welcomed as a messenger of a greater truth. It's going to be shot in North America, in Europe, and even in Asia, where she went. So we hope you're as excited as we are about this project and that you will support it. Thanks a lot.
If you want to support this project, visit www.memoirsofaformermystic.com or just follow the links in this week's show notes.
Oh, hi, Maynard.
Oh, hi, Heidi. Great day in this park.
Yeah, if you like that sort of thing.
Look over there. A yowie.
There are no such things as yowies, silly.
Might be just a dog, a big dog. I think it's a King Charles Spaniel thing. No. It's a yowie.
Maynard, if it's a choice between it being a dog or a yowie...
No, it's a yowie. Yowie. Argument from authority. It's a yowie.
Hey, you two, what are you arguing about?
Maynard thinks that dog-looking thing over there is a yowie.
A yowie?
Or maybe Chewbacca the Wookiee?
I see. Okay, we better look this up in the Skeptics Dictionary online.
The what?
The Skeptics Dictionary online. It features definitions, arguments and essays on hundreds of strange beliefs, amusing descriptions and dangerous delusions. It also features dozens of entries on logical fallacies, cognitive biases, perception, science and philosophy. It's at www.skepdic.com.
Right, Hardy. Prepared to be amazed.
Okay, yowie. Here it is. It's under Bigfoot. It says... Most scientists discount the evidence of Bigfoot because the evidence supporting belief in the survival of a prehistoric biped ape-like creature of such dimensions is scant.
You know, maybe that is just Chewbacca after all. Thank you, Skeptics Dictionary Online.
Now here's a story from the Australian Skeptics at skeptics.com.au, written by Tim Mendham, published on the 2nd of February 2018. Scientific literacy, low priority for complementary and alternative medicine practitioners. A draft industry skills forecast for the complementary health industry puts scientific literacy near the bottom of its list of, quote, key generic skills ranked in order of importance, end quote. Quote, science, mathematics and scientific literacy, end quote, ranks 11 out of 12, meaning finance and entrepreneurship, including the ability to sell ideas and products, are more important. Only, quote, environmental and sustainability, end quote, skills rate lower than an appreciation and knowledge of science. The complementary medicine disciplines covered in the forecast are aromatherapy, Ayurveda, kinesiology, massage and remedial massage therapy, reflexology, shiatsu, and traditional Chinese medicine, remedial massage. The list is part of a skills forecast document prepared by Skills IQ, quote, a not-for-profit independent skills service organisation supporting a range of industry reference committees, IRCs, to undertake training product development that ensures skills meet future industry needs, end quote. Skills IQ receives some financial support from the Commonwealth Government. The 17 IRCs that Skills IQ works with are responsible for overseeing the development and review of training packages, serving the skills needs of almost 50% of the Australian workforce. Skills IQ objectives include facilitating IRCs to advise the Australian Government via the Australian Industry and Skills Committee, IRCG, on, quote, positioning Australia to respond to additional demands for services as our population ages to capitalise on synergies across the services sector to increase career pathways and mobility and recruitment of young people, end quote. The complementary health skills document is not sure how many businesses there are in the overall complementary medicine sector. Depending on the source, there are somewhere between 19,500 to nearly 30,000. Those numbers include other services not covered in the skills forecast, but are still classified as complementary or, quote, allied, end quote, services. Most of the businesses are single-person operations. The 12 generic skills required by complementary and alternative medicine operators are supplied by the Commonwealth Department of Education and Training, though not necessarily in the order presented. Ranked from the most important to the least, they are 1. Communication, collaboration, social intelligence. 2. Learning agility, information literacy, intellectual autonomy. 3. Customer service marketing. 4. Financial. 5. Entrepreneurial. 6. Language, literacy and numeracy. 7. Design mindset. Thinking critically. System thinking. Problem solving. 8. Technology and application. 9. Data analysis. 10. Managerial leadership. 11. Science, technology, engineering and maths. Science, mathematics and scientific literacy. 12. Environmental sustainability. The 7th skill set, which includes critical thinking, covers, quote, ability to adapt products to rapidly shifting consumer tastes and trends, ability to determine the deeper meaning or significance of what is being expressed via technology, ability to understand how things are regarded as systems influence one another with a complete entity or larger system, ability to think historically, end quote. As an aside, fans of Yes Minister might be hearing Sir Humphrey Appleby at the moment. And that report by Tim Mendham appears at www.skeptics.com.au. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Now, next week, we hope to bring you an update on the story that made news here recently. In the last few days, the Australian Senate has passed a bill in relation to the Therapeutics Goods Administration, which opened the door to all sorts of quack claims to be made. We reported on this last week. Sadly, that's gone through. It's absolutely outrageous. But anyway, we'll try to bring you some more information about that next week. I'm looking forward on the first Thursday of next month to Skeptics in the Pub, where Maynard, myself and Lara Benham will be conducting a trivia night. If you love trivia, love skepticism, it's a skeptical trivia night. So all the questions, well, most of them, I think, are wrapped up with your skeptical knowledge. There'll be some prizes along the way and lots of fun. So that's Sydney Skeptics in the Pub. More details at skeptics.com.au. And thank you for those people who continue to support the Skeptic Zone with your donations via Patreon or PayPal. And in fact, with your generous help over the last couple of years, I was able to, well, it certainly helped me purchase a new iPad, which I use quite a lot for the Skeptic Zone. In fact, something like 75% of the Skeptic Zone is now edited on the iPad using an app I really like called Ferrite. For those of you who want to give it a go, it's a wonderful multi-track audio editor. And while I'm talking about these matters, I'm also very taken with the Apple Pencil. Well done, Apple. No, I don't get any kickbacks from Apple, not a one. And the app called Procreate, which is an artistic app, which uses lots of different pens and pencils and inking and multiple layers, and it's just very well done. So they're my tips. There you go, folks. If you happen to have an iPad Pro, I can recommend that combination. Again, I have no deal with Apple, I promise you. But until next week, and in the meantime, I'll practice some more artistic endeavours. This is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics or any other skeptical organisation.